Welcome to the Guide, Not Guru podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Brock. My purpose is to empower women to create authentic, aligned, and abundant lives. After over a decade of mentoring women in business and self-leadership, I found that we don't need to adopt a guru's blueprint. We need guides to help us build our own. So if you're ready to lead and be a work in progress, you've come to the right place. Today's podcast episode honestly has the potential to completely change your life, to change the way you look at growing, to change the way that you see yourself, to see the way that you feel stress and fear and anxiety as you become this bigger, real, most authentically expressed version of yourself. And today is all about courage. And I often say that courage is the tipping point. And, I think we know that, of course, to have this big, beautiful, bright, expansive life, you have to be courageous enough to get it. And we conceptually get that. But what I have loved to learn in the last few years of my own personal evolution and my own personal self-discovery is this is not just a cool idea. It is literally a scientific, physical, energetic freedom that comes from courage. And I hope to walk you through that today to help shift the way you see showing up courageously. And so when we think about the things that we want, we know that they are on the other side. We've heard this, you can't have faith and fear, right? Faith and fear can't coexist. And honestly, I believed that for a really long time. So every time I felt fear, I was like, this is a sign I should not go. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. And so we keep waiting for this ready one day moment when all of a sudden we're not going to feel afraid. And yet courage is the moment where we feel the fear and do it anyway. And again, I know I'm saying things that might feel like that's very cliche of you, but it's real. And I want to walk you through this. And I want to tell you why I'm equipped to talk about this. Honestly, if my gravestone does not have "she was courageous" on it, then I quit. No, I'm just kidding. But truly, for the first 30 years of my life, if we're just catching each other, I spent the first 30 years of my life just asking everyone who I needed to be and bending to fit. And I honestly had no conscious idea I was doing that until I started to really get sick and have to pay attention to myself. And so I started looking inward and I was like, okay, where did this come from? Why is this here? What happened? I used to be so happy and free and all these things. And so I started to do inner work. I started to look at myself. So then I started to find oh my gosh, everything I want is not how I'm living. And I was so afraid to face the truth of who I was and how I'd been living and all of these things. And what it ultimately led me to was the leaving of my 10-year network marketing business. And if you've ever been a part of any kind of organization that is this big kind of movement, maybe it's a religion, maybe it's a local community, maybe it's a culture you've grown up in, maybe it's, again, a network marketing group or something that's very tight knit. I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of our greatest needs is for love and belonging. And when we don't have that in our lives, we feel like I will die. And so when I started to do this self-reflecting, I realized all the things I want to become require that I leave, require that I say, I don't want to do this anymore. And I want to find out what I'm capable of. I just remember sitting and thinking if I get to the end of my life, and I am met with the flash screen of how I lived my life and all my unwrapped gift, all my gifts that were never used, all my potential that was never activated, and I did it because I needed to be accepted, I was like, no, I can't live like this. I must change. And so for me, it looked like walking away from a career that had been my entire adult identity. So from 22 to 32, I was seeing myself one way. And so I was not only divorcing just like a label, I was divorcing friends, I was divorcing a lifestyle and income and everything. It was like the most courageous act of my life. And the truth is, in the moment that I was, walking away from this, that, it was a process of getting to the courage to do it. But when I did it, when I finally said, there is no more, my greatest fear was that people would say, we don't want you. If you're all of yourself and it's not here and it's not in the way we want it and it's not packaged like this and you're not representing us and you don't believe what we believe anymore, this is called groupthink. If you've never looked up groupthink, I highly recommend it. But if you don't believe this, you're out. We don't want you. That was my biggest fear. I was like, if I say this is who I really want to be, will they still love me, Kelly? And within days of me making this decision for myself, my true authenticity, I watched the number of followers on my social media accounts dwindle. I had people leaving me exit messages saying like, hey, I loved following you, but now that you're not growing in this company, like I'm probably not going to follow you anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, you don't have to like leave an exit message, like go, I would have never known. But it was painful. And I felt myself on the bottom of the floor of like, my biggest fear was realized. Not only are there people saying, leaving me, they're agreeing, I don't want you if you're not this. And so I was like, I'll be courageous and it'll all work out. And then it was like this bottom line. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And then time passed. And then I got up. And then I realized who my real friends were. And then I found out more about myself. And then I found out what I was capable of. And then I grew new strength and resiliency and capacity. And then I had even more drive for the exact thing that I'm doing at this moment in time, because I thought I will never, ever contribute to the message that people have to be one thing in order to be happy, successful. There's no blueprint. It's why this podcast is named this. I am so freaking willing to be your guide, but I don't want to be your guru. You have your own personal, life. Freedom and fulfillment is so personal, and yet we look to other people for it. And so, there were all these gifts that came on the other side of courage. And yet it's so scary to face those moments where we know everything we want is like, it's almost like here's the bridge, here's the water, and there's a little bridge and it requires courage. And everything you want's on the other hill. You're like, oh, I see it. I see my happiness and my success and my most authentic, version of myself. And I see myself in a beautiful relationship with me. And I see all the things I could be, but it requires a leaving. It requires that I face my fears. It requires that I step into courage. And so I did. And now courage is so much of what women come to me for, because they're looking for, how can I get an example? How can I be in your space? How can I understand what courage was for you so I can find it in myself and I can actually be me? And as I started to really look into how do we change our lives, especially over the last year and a half, I actually came across something that changed the game for me, because then it wasn't just courage. Oh, courage is cute. And it's like be courageous. It was not just this cliche saying anymore. It was courage is an actual real thing that happens. And so I want to teach you about the levels of consciousness. I lead a mastermind that's called Conscious Leader, and it's all about women rising into the highest vibration, the limitless potential of their life by consciously evolving. And so when you go to look this up, you can Google it, but I want to paint a picture for you if you're just listening to my words. So I want you to imagine a pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid is wide and long, and then it goes higher up and they get smaller, right? But there's the different layers. And I want you to imagine that there's a halfway point in the middle of this pyramid. And below that, starting from the bottom and moving up, you have all of these emotions. Actually, in this entire pyramid, it is all of the emotions that we will experience in the human experience. So it starts at the bottom with shame. Shame is the lowest vibrating emotion we could possibly feel in our human experience. If you've ever felt shame, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It deflates us. It is so low vibration, we actually feel like we can't go on. It's so low vibration, we feel like we can't go on, right? Then we have guilt. Then we have fear. then we have anger, then we have pride, right? So I want you to imagine these levels just go up and up and up. Then we have courage. And at the point that courage comes in here, we start to tip. Courage is the tipping point, because when we go on the human emotional scale of vibration, literally, if you guys didn't know this, we are actually like vibrating beings. And we are putting off an electromagnetic field, energetic signature at every single moment of our lives. We are putting off a vibration. And it's how our life comes to us and responds to us based on our vibration, the vibration we've been holding. And so if we are someone who is living in shame, guilt, fear, anger, resentment, pride, we are in what's called low vibration. And you actually know that based on how you feel. You're like, I feel exhausted. I feel scared. I feel anxious. Our emotions actually tell us how we're doing in vibration. So all of those low vibrations, they take so much energy actually from the world. They actually take so much energy from you to be in them, because they're low vibration. Well, the minute we get to courage is the tipping point. And after we cross over courage, we start to move into high vibration. We start to move into places like acceptance, love, joy, peace, enlightenment. All the things that we want actually start to happen faster and easier for us. We find supernatural support. We find amazing relationships all up here in the high vibe. We hear high vibe, and again, it sounds like, oh, that's like this trendy thing to say. And yet high vibration, low vibration, it is the way of being. And so when we start to actually understand it, like the moment that I am courageous, I move into high vibe. The moment that I am courageous, I drop lower level vibrations and I start to free up that energy to move in an upward direction in my life. When you think everything you want is in the growth zone, everything you want is on the other side of courage, you're right, because it actually is. All the love, joy, belonging, sense of purpose, meaning, it is literally on the other side. And so understanding that when we are someone who chooses to act in courage, we are actually shifting energetically our lives. Like that made this so real for me, because then I understood this is the point, this like line on this graph is the moment that I start to transform and alchemize the energy that was in my body. I start to break up the old, lower, heavy. And tell me for a second, when you're someone who's in low vibe, your life is so heavy. You are carrying and feeling the weight of your world. And you're not even just carrying it once. You're carrying it over and over and over again. No wonder you're exhausted. No wonder you can't be inspired. No wonder you feel like you don't have the energy to take the step of faith, because you're in low vibe, right? And so courage is where that energy starts to transform, and it becomes the tipping and upward movement of our life. And I think a lot of times that we think courage, when we think of courage, the first time I think of courageous women, I think of Disney characters. I grew up on Disney, and I think about Mulan, and I think about Ariel, and I think about, all these, Disney princesses, and they make it almost romanticized. Like all of a sudden they were just brave, or all of a sudden they were just courageous. And we think, okay, I'll know courage because I'll feel like that. I'll look like that. I'll have just this driven, focused, you can't stop me energy. And yet courage doesn't feel like that, does it? Courage often feels like crawling. Oh no, I have to. I must. I can't stay here anymore. I have to have the courage to leave. Oh no, I have to tell him how I feel. I can't live with myself anymore. No, I'm so scared. What will I lose if I say what I really think? Courage is this interesting mixture. It's not this moment of like, wow, I'm high vibe, or no, I'm low vibe. It's actually kind of a dance between the two. And, Brene Brown, cannot wait to have her on the podcast. Just going to go ahead and throw that out there, because she's my guide. She's one of my favorite guides. And, when she talks about courage, she says that there's actually 4 pillars of what it takes to have courage. And the first is vulnerability. And vulnerability is risk, it's uncertainty, it's emotional exposure. So, in order to be courageous, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to walk into this space of unknown, this risky space. It feels emotionally exposed. The other three pieces are clarity of values. There's something really powerful that happens in a moment of courage because you're like, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. Even though I haven't been living it, I must, right? Then there has to be trust and rising skills. And so trust can come from so many places. Trust can come from, I've done this before, I can do it again. Or trust is going, I haven't trusted me, but I'm willing to trust me now. Or trust is in the supernatural or in God or in your universal support. But there's like, I just know. I remember when I had this big act of courage and people were like, where are you going? Like, they were like, you're leaving for another company or you've already been having clients or blah, blah, blah. And I remember saying, I don't have anything. I had not one signed client when I walked away from everything. I mean, 70% of our income was me. We had to tow our cars, car. It was big. It was a big act of courage. And I remember them saying, like, where are you going? And I was like, I don't know. I have an idea. I don't know if it'll pan out, but I'm willing to bet on me. And I know that I have a peace that surpasses all understanding. I just know that God is going to support me. And that was like, other people were not cool with that answer. They were just like making up other lies or like not wanting to buy that, wanting to dig for more details. I was like, I don't know what else to tell you. I don't have another job. I don't currently have anything built. I just know. And I can't stay here another minute. And so there's this level of trust. And then there's rising skills. And rising skills is really important because I think a lot of times we think, okay, I'll be courageous enough when I've learned it all, when I know what to do, when I can bring that sense of security for myself. And that's not what courage brings. Courage brings, I know enough to take the step and I'll figure it out on the other side. Courage brings into this mixture of saying, I don't know, but I'm willing to rise. I'm willing to figure it out. I'm willing to see what I'm capable of. It's saying I'm willing to rise and learn these skills along the way, but I have to. And so I want you to actually, if you have the ability, I want you to actually close your eyes for a moment. Get settled in your chair. Possibly feet on the floor. Straighten your back. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And I want you to remember a time that you were courageous. Whatever one pops into your mind, I want you to go there. And almost like it's a panoramic video you're getting to view, I want you to re-experience it. What were you feeling when you were being courageous? What emotions were in your body? What were you actually physically feeling? Where was the dance of fear showing up in your body? What were you doing? What were you thinking? I want you to kind of remember, what was this experience of courage like for you? And then when you feel ready, I want you to open your eyes again. And I want you to notice what was there for you. Because I want you to find and to define what is your unique combination of what it looks like and feels like to be courageous. So you might say, oh my gosh, I realized not only was I thinking like, I'm so scared, I'm not going to be able to handle this, I don't know what to do, but I also was thinking, I can do this. We've got this. Or you might notice for me, my stomach feels like it's like my stomach and my heartbeat feels like it's thumping in my throat. It's like I have a hard time swallowing. I can like feel my heartbeat literally in my throat. My breathing is shallow. I find myself feeling scared. I find myself thinking about rejection. I find myself thinking about like loss. I literally sometimes have felt like I'm going to die. And also present with those same feelings is you're supported. You can do this. This is what God's calling you to. Like, you're made for this. And so, at the beginning of this episode, I talked about how people say faith and fear can't coexist, and I just don't find that to be true. I find the exact moment that I'm tipping into courage, faith and fear are both there. There's this scared part of us, which I know we will dive into even more, but if you've done any kind of ego work to understand, as children, we learned how to survive. We literally learned, how do I have to be in order to survive in this family, in this culture, in this community, in this church, in this whatever, in this friend group. And so we molded and we became a false self on us, which is called the ego. And the ego did everything it could then to protect us, and it wants to do it again. So every time you go being crazy, trying to grow again, the ego's like, stop this. Stop it. I already told you how to keep yourself safe. Stop growing. Stop going into the growth zone and taking risk and doing these things. We can't handle it. So it will do everything it can to sabotage you. It will bring well-meaning. I say well-meaning because it just loves you and wants to keep you safe, but it'll come in with like really righteous thoughts. Like, I shouldn't. Or, this could affect other people. Or what if I lose money? I need to be responsible. I don't have that opportunity. And it just brings you into this beautiful victim mode that sounds right. But you're not a victim. You're not a victim. You may have been believing you were. You may have been agreeing at one point, but you're not a victim of your circumstances. You can't name a person on the planet who doesn't have circumstances. And there's always the story of the other people who rise with the same circumstances you've been given. And so courage is this moment where that ego comes up and is like, no, 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 no. And then there's also this element of this higher self of you. And it's like, shh, we can do this. So I think it's important for you to understand, what does courage feel like in my body? Because the next moment that you're being called to be courageous, you'll remember. You'll be like, oh, wait, this is it. This is how I feel. Oh, my heart is thumping in my throat. I'm sweating. I think I'm going to die. I also believe in myself and I can hardly breathe. And there's a part of me that just wants to rise. And the other part of me is like, I'm going to die. Oh, this is it. This is courage. Oh yeah, I remember. This is actually super powerful for you all to understand, that you can actually in your body have this experience, really be present to it and witness it, because when you understand what courage looks and feels like for you, you won't misidentify it the next time. Because so many times, again, people are waiting for this moment that there's not the fear, and that's just not how courage works. It will actually never be the moment. You could study up, take your time, get the finances, all the things your mind is telling you I need in place in order to be brave. And the minute you have to be brave, you will still feel these feelings. You will just have wasted more time. And so it's important for you to understand what courage feels like, because now that you know the little pyramid and you understand there's actually something on the other side, that's wildly important. This is not just a cute concept. This is a human energetic experience that you are holding yourself back from if you don't cross over courage. And it's unfair of me to tell you about courage and what it feels like to step in it if I don't tell you what it feels like after courage. And if you have experienced big acts of courage before, some of this might feel familiar to you. So for me and so many of my clients, I find that we have an emotional hangover afterwards. It's like, listen, the first time you are being her, this bigger, authentic, brave, honest version of yourself for the first time, you just literally took all that lower level energy and were like surging it through the roof of courage. You're gonna be exhausted. You're like, this just took everything I have. And you could make meaning in your mind to say like, this is not worth it. That just wore me out. This was too stressful. I can't handle it. I'm exhausted. But if you understand, oh, this is just what's going to happen after I do this. You know, it's interesting for me. I actually, after the moments of courage, a lot of time my moments of courage are speaking my truth. And when that happens, I actually get a little buzzy at first. I get like a little wired. And if you have not taken this quiz, it's so good. It's an assessment. It's called the Positive Intelligence Assessment, and it tells you how your ego shows up in saboteurs, your top saboteurs, these saboting thoughts and belief systems that come in. So as soon as I'm courageous, I'm like, oh, I did it. I like fall over the line, right? Crawling. And then I get emotionally exhausted, and I also find my saboteurs. I'm not feeling more brave afterwards. I'm not like, Kelly, you did it at first. Nope. The first thing that happens, I get emotionally exhausted, and then these saboteurs come in. And my top 3 saboteurs are people pleaser, high achiever, and avoider. So immediately, if I'm posting something on social media, guess who shows up? People pleaser. She's like, check. What did they say? Right? Or then my hyperachiever is like rereading my words. Did you say it right? Did you get it right? And my avoider is like, I'd like to run away. Can we just escape somewhere? Right? So it's going to be normal for your nervous system to actually want to fight, flight, or freeze. And often that shows up in our saboteurs. And so I just now know the language of my saboteurs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just find myself wanting to check to see how people feel about the truth that I told. How silly. And I have to actually resist that and go, no. This was for you. This act of courage was for you. And so I feel emotionally exhausted. My saboteurs show up. I want to fight, flight, or freeze. This is a normal, natural response. So let's normalize it. You're not wrong for feeling these things. Your body is freaking out. And so it wants to like convince you to never do this again. And if you buy that, you become stuck again. And we don't want that to happen. So instead, you are going to tell this vulnerable part of you, we're okay. One of my two favorite sayings that I say to myself is, I'm okay and I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm safe. Every single one of our saboteurs or this ego is because it was trying to give us safety. And so I remind myself when I'm being brave, I'm safe. And so after that, when you give it time, you remind yourself you're safe, all of a sudden you will find this sense of peace that comes in. It's almost this sense of like stillness or this sense of acceptance or this love or pride or, personal power. Courage is the first place in the levels of vibration that there's empowerment. It is the first upward, forward moving, expansion, vibrating emotion. And so I guarantee you'll have a little pitfall, and then all of a sudden this higher vibration will rise. And you will find on the other side of courage the things that you hoped for. And I will never, ever promise you that courage doesn't come with a cost, because it does. Because when you choose to walk away from lower level vibration things, there has to be a breaking down in order to have a rebuilding. And so you may lose people. There may be fights. There may be disappointments. There may be all of these things, feel them. But I promise every time those things break away in their power to control you, all of a sudden new energy is available and you have it there for you to build your new life. And the next time you have to go be courageous in that same exact thing, it won't cost you as much. You'll be like, okay, wait, what did I need to do last time? Okay, I've got this. Because now in your nervous system, in your body, in your energy is this, like, imagine your energy field all around you. There's like words written in there that's like, we can do this. All of a sudden you believe you can do this. You're like, I'm not going to die. I can handle this. Courage is the tipping point. You know, I wish sometimes that it could be a different way. But then it would be keeping you from the gifts that are on the other side. You know, you're going to have to give up being liked to be really seen and loved. You're going to have to give up you have to be willing to be misunderstood, to be truly understood. You're going to have to give up an old life to get your new life. It's the cost. But I promise you, when you get to this new life you've built on the other side, you realize it was just for you. And it was by your design. And so the courage is always worth it. I promise. Every next moment, you have to take a step of courage again. You will remind yourself, wait, I've done this before. Maybe not in this exact rep, in this exact way. But everything I want is on the other side of courage, and I can handle this. So keep me updated, y'all. Nothing makes me happier than knowing that I'm a deposit in your life and to hear about the tipping points that you're in. You can do this, and I'm so proud of you. And I can't wait to talk to you guys again soon. Hey friend, thank you for listening. My goal is to empower as many women as possible. If this episode supported you in any way, I would love it if you'd leave me a review or let me know on Instagram. You can take a screenshot or tag me or just shoot me a DM. If you're looking for any kind of additional support, don't hesitate to reach out. See you here next Tuesday.